रिजिडिटी होती है ना एक, जब भी डिजिटल बोर्ड खरीदते हैं तो 3-4 फ्री मिलते हैं, तो यूज होते नहीं है। मेरे पास भी पड़े हैं 3-4 घर पे। मैं कहा आज नहीं करेंगे स्केच पेन से, बहुत हुआ। एनीवे, सो आज से मिडिएवल स्टार्ट करेंगे, ठीक है। साउंड ठीक आ रहा है? फोन हो गया ना? चेक कर लेगा। हेलो हेलो, ठीक है। तो तुम्हारी स्क्रीन में ना कुछ अलग सही हो रहा है। ठीक है, स्टार्ट कर। So, good afternoon to all of you. Okay, from today we'll be beginning with medieval. Okay, medieval part. Now, when we discuss about medieval, first we'll discuss part known as early medieval period. It is from 750 to 1200 AD. This is known as the early medieval period. Okay. After that, we'll begin what is truly the part of the medieval era, the beginning of Delhi Sultanate. We'll discuss about all of its dynasties, and then the specific policies of various sultans. Okay? Various policies of the sultans. तो आज हम यहीं तक कवर करेंगे, स्टार्ट हम यहाँ से करेंगे, अर्ली मिडिएवल पीरियड से स्टार्ट करेंगे। चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं। Okay. Yesterday I discussed with all of you that what is the meaning of feudalism. Feudalism means there is a hierarchical kind of a structure. What's the meaning of hierarchy? At the top we have a king. Like in Europe there used to be king at the top, then there used to be lords, then there used to be knights, at the bottom there used to be serfs. This was the structure. A hierarchy was there. Okay? A hierarchy was there. A very similar system, not exactly same, similar system could be seen in the case of India also. This system we say as Saman system. Saman system means at the top we had a king. Okay? The king was having suppose 4-5 major lords or major kings under their control. Under them there used to be further division of power. Thus all of these, all of them, they used to have control over land. We have discussed previously that land grants started in India starting from which time period? Satavahana. And they expanded greatly during the time of Vakatakas and the Guptas. And this became a general feature. This became a general feature for the early medieval period. Okay? And this system is known as Saman system. There are few features which you need to remember. Number one, there was decentralization of power. Okay? There was decentralization of power. One. Number two, there was decline of secondary economic activities, and we see the rise of land-based economy. Why land-based economy? Because naturally, try to understand this. Why did India came out with GST? Why did India came out with GST? सबसे बड़ा reason क्या? We wanted to simplify the overall tax system. Tax system को हमने शुरू करा था. अब आप सोचिए, if the India is, or suppose any territory is divided into so many landlords, what will happen? They will have their own taxes. So it becomes very difficult for trade and commerce to continue when we have large number of people exerting power. हर कोई पावर अपना इन्वेस्ट कर रहा है, अपने हिसाब से टैक्स लगाने की कोशिश कर रहा है. तो इसमें सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत किसकी तरह से बनती है? एक कॉमर्स के इंसान की. So that's why we see decline of trade and commerce, right? And naturally, which economy became more important? Land-based. That's why during the early medieval period, when we discuss the economy part specifically, we see rise of agriculture. Agriculture improves during this time. Okay, there is diversification. Reason being, everybody was just largely dependent upon agriculture during this time period. Second, if we see economy this time, right, we see revival of trade and commerce only after a little bit of time period. Like there's a decline from 700 to 900, and then we see the beginning of reversal of this decline from 900 to around 1300 AD. This is the phase of decline of trade and commerce, both internal as well as external. And this is where we see the beginning of revival. Will not say it will reach its peak, but it was like the beginning of revival. The beginning of revival starts from this time period. ठीक है, ट्रेड वापस से स्टार्ट होती है. ठीक है. थर्ड, reduced example of de-urbanization. De-urbanization means few previous cities were now completely deserted. उनको छोड़ दिया गया. Previous cities like Aichatra, which we have in the region of Uttar Pradesh, right? Rakshila, all such cities were now on the decline. Multiple cities were now on the decline, right? So de-urbanization was there broadly in North India. Broadly in North India, we see a phase of de-urbanization. Thus, if we see from the point of view of economy, one more thing which we see is that during this time, large number of associations were formed of the guilds. Because naturally, doing business as a singular person was very difficult. There was a requirement of creating an organization. The self-help group होता है, they come together so that their trade and commerce increase. So like that also we see many guilds organizations being built during this period of time, and their examples can be seen from South India. Yesterday we discussed that the kind of feudalism which was there in Europe, exactly same characteristics were not there in India. There were few differences. Okay, like one major difference that we see in feudalism from there in India here is that peasants were not restricted. In India, the farmers could easily move from one place to another. That luxury was not there in Europe. And why? Because in Europe, they were trying to concentrate on the production process. Production कौन करता है? Farmers. Farmers do the production part. So that's why they were trying to capture this production process in Europe so that they can have more number of, you could have more number of crops, right? That was the main agenda behind that. But in case of India, this was not required. Already we were bountiful. Already all of us were having large number of crops in India. Okay, this is the reason why even the invaders came to India. What was the major reason of the coming of whom? Mahmud. Why Mahmud came to India? The reason was India was wealthy. India was wealthy. Why? Because we were having very strong agriculture. Agriculture was very strong. This was the major reason why eventually we were not required to restrict or control the peasantry in any part of. Alright, these are some of the pointers which you need to remember with respect to the economy of early medieval. Yes. De-urbanization, look, it normally happens when you do not have trade and commerce. Actually, अब आप सोचिए, अगर आप दिल्ली को देखिए, दिल्ली में अगर सारे बाजार बंद कर दो, Delhi is largely driven by the secondary or the tertiary economic activities. If these economic activities are going to go back, एकदम से mass exodus होगा. COVID period याद है? In COVID period, what happened everywhere? These things were closed, and suddenly people are going back to their villages. That even though the complete city was not deserted, because residential areas are also there in Delhi. But in general, if mass exodus happen, it can lead to de-urbanization. And support if the state is also not ready to support that city. Today we have an evolved state which can take care of its territory very easily. In those times, suppose the king whose major center was there, that king is gone. What will happen? Suddenly you will see the, like many of such places like Aichatra is such an example. There were multiple places which were going down. Even though some places were now becoming urbanized also. Right? If we go to the region of Pushkar, Pushkar was getting urbanized during the early. Okay? Even if we go into some specific areas of Haryana, they were also getting urbanized. Why? Because dynasties were rising. Like Kannauj became a very famous center by now. Why? Because Kannauj was the most important political power seat. That city was now in the process of urbanization. But the level of deurbanization, like this is the concept given by R.S. the historian. He's a Marxist historian and he say India went through a phase of urban decay. That's the word he used, urban decay. A few cities were on the decline. तो देखो ऑप्शनल में यही चीजें हमें सबसे ज्यादा समझनी कि इंडिया में तीन अर्बनाइजेशन हुए हैं, ठीक है. वी हैव सीन हाउ मेनी अर्बनाइजेशन? 3. फर्स्ट वाज इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन, राइट, 2600 to 1900 BC, the mature phase. We are talking only about the mature phase. Then Vedic Aryans came, so they were not urbanized. Then we see the 6th century BC. 6th century BC, this urbanization is going to continue till broadly around 4th century AD. Okay, then there is going to be a phase of de-urbanization, and then again the re-urbanization is going to happen across India in 13th century. So there are 3 phases: Indus Valley, 6th century, and 13th century AD. And this is going to happen because of the arrival of Turks. This is going to happen because of rise of 16 Mahajan Pradhans. And this is going to happen because of the long process of evolution which we see in the northwest part of Indian subcontinent. Agriculture surplus is important for all of them. But other than this factor, there are multiple factors responsible for urbanization. देखिए, urbanization एक बहुत ही important process है किसी भी economy में. Like today we have around 32% urbanization in India as per the 2011 census. Probably अब हो सकता है 40 पहुंच जाए at the max. क्योंकि already हम 14 साल आगे आ चुके हैं. Once the census is going to be complete, we'll have the correct data. But in every developed city or very developed country, what you will find? Maximum people live in urban areas, right? So urbanization is a very important sign of a developing economy. It's a very important sign of a developing economy, right? Because whenever the wealth comes in, the first area which is going to get the wealth is urban. Because taxes are going to be collected by the state. Where will they spend it first? The first spend is going to be in urban area. Like in India also this happens. 2/3 of our population is living in rural areas. So at the time of vote, they are more important. But 2/3 of our GDP is contributed by our cities. 2/3 of our GDP is contributed by our cities. So when we see the financial power, it is in the cities. When we see the political power, in the rural area. ये conundrum चलता है लाइफ के अंदर. तो इसलिए वैसे पूरे टाइम पॉलिटिशियन यहाँ बैठे, ठीक है, जैसे 6 महीने, the 6 months would be left, they will go back to their constituencies because they also know कि जो 4-5 साल में जो करना था कर लिया. Now this is the real time to connect with the masses. That's, everybody knows that all the politicians, they are smart people. Without smartness, without people management, nobody comes to power. They know how to do this, right? So naturally, in those times also, there were multiple types of circumstances which were responsible for the rise or the downfall of a certain urbanization. Like Indus Valley civilization, why was it abandoned? Because probably there was a climate change, and because of this climate change, the agricultural resources were not sustainable enough to take care of the people around them. Even though there are other interpretations also, like probably some invasion was, etc., etc. If we go to multiple places, multiple outcomes are also there. Like Mohenjo-daro was flooded by the river, right? It was flooded 7 times. So we do not know exactly what was the overall reason, but in general, the historians are accepting the climate change or ecological degradation as the reason responsible for decline of Harappan civilization. Similarly, when we go for 6th century BC, this continued for a very long time. And by the time when the Gupta dynasty came into power, we see the large-scale use of land grant. The central authority started declining. And what will happen when the resources which are available to the central authority are going to decline? The first area to suffer is naturally going to be cities. This is where they do the. That's why we see a decline of the urbanization. And again, with the arrival of Turks, we see the third urbanization. I hope the concept is clear now. Okay, you got the idea about it. Okay, so if we see broadly the early medieval period in India, early medieval period is having its own political characteristics. One characteristic that we have seen in our polity is that it was having elements of feudalism. That is a system of land grants plus the Samanta system. Okay, that's your political characteristic. Number one. Number two, India faced a large number of invasions. When we talk about invasions, first by the Arabs, we'll discuss about that. Second, by the Turks. So two types of invasions happened in India. First by the Arabs, second by the Turks. Number three, we were also having our own struggle. Three dynasties were fighting among themselves. All of them went down because of this. There was a tripartite struggle. Okay, between whom? Palas, Pratiharas and Rashtrakutas. Okay? Palas, Pratiharas and Rashtrakutas. These three dynasties are going to fight for the political struggle. During the later half of early medieval period, in North India specifically, we'll see the rise of Rajput. So when we discuss the political features of early medieval period, these are the highlights. These are the highlights which we need to remember. We have already discussed about this. Now our focus is going to be on invasions, and side by side we'll talk about the tripartite struggle. Okay? That's how it's going to be, right? When we discuss about the economic features, just laid down the economic feature on the previous page. I hope you got some basic idea about the economy of early medieval period. This economy, as we have just discussed, was based upon certain pillars, like number one, the rise of agriculture. First we see decline of trade and commerce, and then we see the rise of trade and commerce. De-urbanization also faces same kind of pattern. First we see decline specifically in which part of India? North India, right? It is not applicable to South India because one of the most strongest dynasty was there. That was Chola dynasty, which was there. Okay, and the guilds, they were becoming very powerful during this time. Plus, they started keeping their own army. The guilds started keeping their own army. तो उनको समझ में आ गया राजा तो हमें दे नहीं पा रहा सिक्योरिटी. The kings are fighting among themselves. They need an army of their own. उनको बोलते श्रेणी वाला, कि जिस श्रेणी को बचाएंगे, ठीक है ना? That's how it used to be. So this is about the economy. ठीक है? If we see the society of this time period, broadly the same characteristics are there which we can be aware of. Like number one, we were having a patriarchal society which was led by men. Number one. Number two, caste system was very, very prominent in this society. That was also there. Number three, during this time period, what do we see? That some rigidness and some flexibility came in. When we say rigidity, it means we see the expansion of untouchables in India during the early medieval period. So, large number of castes were characterized as untouchables. When we talk about flexibility or mobility, then we see the rise of the status of Shudras. The status of Shudras rose during this time period. Why? Because Shudras were now allowed to practice agriculture. पहले शुद्रास को सिर्फ एक ही चीज अलाउड थी, that you will serve the above three varnas. अब उनको एग्रीकल्चर भी अलाउ कर दिया, उनको पुराना सुनना भी अलाउ कर दिया बाय द अर्ली मिडिवल पीरियड. इसी कंसेप्ट को हम क्या बोलते हैं? मोबिलिटी. व्हेन योर सोशल स्टेटस इज इंक्रीजिंग तो उसको बोलेंगे मोबिलिटी. व्हेन आप अपने सोशल स्टेटस को नहीं बढ़ा सकते तो उसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? रिजिडिटी बोलते हैं. इज दैट क्लियर टू ऑल ऑफ यू? ठीक है. यस. Period after the Gupta, early medieval period. In fact, ये जो information है about society is given to us by Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni, he writes this book famously known as Kitabul Hind. तो तहकीके हिंद भी बोलते हैं, किताबुल हिंद. ठीक है, किताबुल हिंद. The society was having these things like education. Yes, it was there, but generally the some of the specific universities of the previous time, they got destroyed, like Nalanda, Vikramshila, they will get destroyed by Bakhtiyar Khalji. The education system is going to now, first, it's going to be facing a big challenge because of innovations. Number two, it's going to get changed also with the entry of, okay, the education system is going to have a change during this time. So whenever somebody uses the word rigidity, mobility, please remember it is often linked to the social status. कि कौन सोसाइटी में मेहनत करके ऊपर जा सकता है, और मेहनत करोगे तब भी ऊपर नहीं जाने देंगे, तो कैसी सोसाइटी है? रिजिड सोसाइटी. And when there is a opportunity to be used, है ना, for that purpose, that is known as mobility. इसको हम mobility बोलते हैं. These were some of the features. Women were facing large number of social levels. They were facing child marriage. They were facing sati. They were facing the further system. So, n number of social levels were there in our society at this time. And these social levels further increased because of the raids. Okay, these social levels further increased. Why child marriage was done in those times? Yes, there was some religious reason also, but some people came out with this system also, that if a girl is not married at an early age, probably she may be taken by somebody in the raid as a collateral damage. That's why people started promoting more and more child marriage. Similarly, it goes for the other systems like further system. What was the reason behind the further system? One of the major reasons behind the further system, that the beauty of the girl should not be shown to anybody else. Right? They should live behind it so that eventually they stay safe. The safety concern led to the more and more acceptance of this further system in general. These kinds of social evils which limited the choices for the women increased during this period. Right? So these are the problems which we see during this time period. Plus, similarly, if we see with respect to architecture, or first we can discuss a little bit about religion. During this time, we see complete decline of Buddhism. Buddhism is now going towards the decline. Why Buddhism is going towards the decline? What's the major reason for that? Yeah, Buddhism rose as a challenge to Hinduism. There were unnecessary level of rituals which were there in the Vedic religion. That was the reason for Buddhism. But by this time, Buddhism accepted Tantrayana, Vajrayana, and these were the ideas again filled with rituals. The difference between Hinduism and Buddhism was very less. Number one. Number two, the monks just started living the luxury life. बुद्धा बोल के गया था, there is sorrow in life. उन्होंने कहा हम सारी sorrow पी के हटा देंगे. And they started drinking in the universities. Yes, it's a reality. These people started drinking in the university में बैठ के पीना शुरू कर दिया नालंदा. वो उस टाइम की 3 इडियट चल रही थी उनकी, right? So they started pursuing such kinds of things which were not allowed in original Buddhism. Plus, Buddhism was also affected by raids from outside. Like Bakhtiyar Khalji, he destroyed majority of the universities towards the east. And when they invaded through the region of Takshila, that led to destruction of university at Takshila also. So Buddhism was now on the decline. Also because of reformation within Hinduism. Hinduism also went for reformation. Okay. So since Hinduism went for reformation, it became responsible. Okay. Since Hinduism went through reformation, it became responsible for the decline of Buddhism. What's the meaning of reformation? Reformation means new kinds of ideas which were now allowing the religious aspirations to be followed. What's the meaning of religious aspiration? Like suppose during this time the Hindus allowed, or the Hinduism allowed Shudras to now read Puranas. So उनकी religious aspiration को accept कर लिया. Same happened with the women also. Women were now also allowed to read Puranas. We also see the rise of Bhakti movement. The Bhakti movement also allowed direct relationship between the devotee and the God. So all those things eventually led to reformation in Hinduism. Plus the rise of acharyas like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, later on Vallabhacharya. All these acharyas also reformed Hinduism. So as a result of this, Buddhism sees decline, Hinduism sees again rise during the early medieval period. Jainism, as we have often seen, has always a significant base, and it continues. Okay, neither it rises very high, neither it goes downwards. Specific communities are following their practices which were shown by the Mahavir from a very long time period. So Jainism was more or less stable during this time. So these are some of the characteristics which can be linked with early medieval period. Whenever somebody says early medieval period to you, remember one keyword: transition. Early medieval period means transition. Transition in polity, transition in economy, transition in society, and transition in religion. Transition. Okay, we are shifting from the various political dynasties who used to give patronage to Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, and suddenly we shift towards Islam. Right? Similarly, if you see with respect to the economic side, initially we were focusing on agriculture during this time. Again, we shift towards urbanization. Secondary economic activities are going to increase. We'll see a complete new society built up with the arrival of Islam, the entry of those who want to follow the Islam and the Muslims, and naturally the culture is now going to change. Like initially, Islam was having brotherhood, bhaichara, everybody is equal. But then they came in contact with Hinduism. And caste के बिना कैसे life चलेगी? So later on, even Islam, it accepted the caste system, जिसमें शरीफ सबसे ऊपर होते हैं और अकलत सबसे नीचे होते हैं. So like that, the caste system also became part of Islam. Similarly, some basic ideas of Islam also helped in reforming Hinduism. Like we see a movement known as Sufism. Now, Sufism and the ideas of the Bhakti movement were very similar to each other. So they were reinforcing two important things. Number one, improving the status of low-borns in the society. Number two, they were trying to ensure that the social evils which are affecting the life of women, they should be eradicated. Like this, we do see a new kind of society. Plus, a new kind of culture is going to come into being. What's the meaning of new kind of culture? A culture based on new languages. Okay, like we'll see the entry of Persian. So far, Sanskrit used to be a major language. It used to get the patronage also, but now we'll see the entry of Persian. All the ruling class, they're going to focus only on one language, and that is Persian. And because of Persian, slowly we'll see the rise of Hindi. Okay, and in the later times, we'll see the rise of. Okay, so new kind of culture is going to rise. New kinds of literature is going to rise. New kind of music is also going to rise. Like if we talk about the Hindustani school of music, the classical school, it has developed because of its intermingling with Persian music. So Hindustani music is going to become a combination of Indian, North Indian style plus that of the Persian. While the South Indian style, which is known as Carnatic, is going to continue as it comes. There's not going to be any major impact on the Carnatic music of South India. So when we say culture, it means new literature, new music, right? So a number of things, even different kinds of art like calligraphy is going to become very important later on. All of you know in Islam there is a rule that there should not be images of living people, right? That is what the Sunni Islam people follow also. But that's why during the Delhi Sultanate we see the rise of calligraphy. Even in the mosque, even in the tombs, you will find calligraphy, which may have some verses. So कुछ जो कुरान के अंदर से कुछ specific lines को चुना जाता है और उसको उसके ऊपर बना दिया जाता है. Calligraphy as an art is going to increase. Plus, we'll see a new kinds of architecture system. Previously, temples were made in India. Now we'll see the entry of new kinds of architecture. Right? अगर हम बिल्कुल basic level पे देखें, तो if we see the temple architecture, it is having beams and columns. Okay, but now things are going to change. We'll see arcuate style. ठीक है ना? Arcuate style is now going to come into the picture. And arcuate style is going to have three important things: arches, domes, and minars. The minars जितने भी हैं सारे हैं, चार मीनार जैसे famous. Arches, domes, and minarets. All of them they begin with. इसीलिए अर्ली मिडिवल पीरियड जो है इसको हम हमेशा बोलते हैं एज ऑफ ट्रांजिशन. दो बड़े बड़े कल्चर, एक कल्चर जो डेवलप हुआ था इंडिजिनस इन इंडिया which was intermingling with Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism, that is going to come in continuation along with that of the Islamic culture. And both are going to merge. Finally, society which will be developed will be known as the medieval society. That's why ये question option में कई बार पूछा गया. Why is early medieval period considered as an age of transition? समझ गए ये concept? ये concept बहुत important है एग्जाम के लिए, ठीक है? और इसलिए मैंने आपको बस ये मोस्टली चलता था इन यूरोप. यूरोप में कभी मूवीज वगैरह भी देखोगे तो ये वर्ड बड़ी जल्दी होता है. आई एम ए लॉर्ड, वो कहता नहीं आई एम ए नाइट. तो वो किस बेसिस पे होता है? वो एक फ्यूडल सिस्टम. द किंग वाज द मोस्ट स्ट्रॉन्गेस्ट वन. किंग ने अथॉरिटी किसको पास ऑन की? लॉर्ड्स को. लॉर्ड्स ने किसको अथॉरिटी दी? नाइट्स को. एंड दीज नाइट्स वर कंट्रोलिंग द लोअर पार्ट ऑफ सोसाइटी, लार्जली कंसिस्टिंग ऑफ द सर्व्स. द वर्ड सर्व मीन्स आपके पास कोई राइट नहीं. सर्व मीन्स दैट यू हैव नो राइट्स. You cannot even leave the premises without the protection, without the agreement from your knight or from your lords. तो ये फ्यूडल सिस्टम जो यूरोप में चला, इसका एक वर्जन इंडिया के अंदर को मिलता है. एंड दैट सिस्टम इज नोन एज द समंता सिस्टम. ठीक है, चलिए अब बात करें. ठीक है, तो नाउ विल डिस्कस अबाउट द इन्वेजन्स. ठीक है, द फर्स्ट इन्वेजन दैट वी हैड, इट इज नोन एज द अरब इन्वेजन. ठीक है, दिस इन्वेजन इट हैपेंड इन द सिंध रीजन. Right, this is the region. Okay, before starting this you should know a little bit about the history of Islam. So Islam became a major religion in the 7th century, and then it began expansion. Okay, by 8th century they came to the border of India. The first area which came under their attack was Sindh, and these were the Arabs who wanted to now control the region of Sindh. The major idea why they wanted to control the region of Sindh is that the Sindh state was weak. The Sindh state was weak, and they were not able to take care of the pirates in this region. In fact, some of the goods which were required to be sent to the caliph, okay, in this region, they were taken by these pirates, and naturally then a military expedition was sent to this region. The person who came at this point of time, his name is Muhammad bin Qasim. Okay, so from the side of the Arabs, see the entry of Muhammad bin Qasim. Muhammad bin Qasim came to this region around 712, and for the next 2 years he was able to capture the region of Sindh. Okay. Now when Arabs came in the region of Sindh, we had a king, and the name of the king was Dahir. So Dahir, he was the king of this region. Okay. But Dahir was not strong enough. Okay. He was not strong enough. In fact, his prime minister also did not support Dahir. This is known as the Battle of Aror. Battle of Aror. In this Battle of Aror, we see Muhammad bin Qasim defeating Dahir. Okay, so Muhammad bin Qasim was able to defeat Dahir in the Battle of Aror, and then he captured. Okay, and then he captured the famous fortress of Brahmanabad. Brahmanabad was the most important fort, which was now captured by Muhammad bin Qasim. Okay, and these rulers, they were of which origin? Brahmin rulers, okay, of the region of Sindh. So that's what you need to remember, that Muhammad bin Qasim came, he captured Brahmanabad, okay, and he also plundered the fort of this region, which is the Fort Debal. Okay, Debal was the fort. Once he was able to capture this region, he sent a specific part of this, which is known as 1/5 part, to whom? Caliph. The Caliph, he was the representative of all the people of the Muslims, okay, and he divided the rest among his soldiers. So this is the story how the region of Sindh came under the control of Muslim or under the control of Islam as a religion. Okay. Wazir was the term which is often used for that. Okay. Prime Minister, in the sense the word that we use is Wazir is the more important word. Okay. Just for the sake of clarification, it makes it easy that he is going to be responsible for taking care of the whole in general. Right? So all the authority was taken by him, even the military used to be under his. That's why when his prime minister did not listen to Dahir and eventually he sided with Muhammad bin Qasim. That made it very easy for Muhammad bin Qasim to take over the control of Sindh. Sindh became the weakest region to target, and Sindh was the first one to get captured. Okay, but this was not a very significant achievement. Why? This region of Sindh was the only weak portion. In fact, the Arabs were not able to go towards the east after that. They could not go towards the east. Why? Because they were stopped by the dynasties of this region. Okay? So they could not go towards the east. That's why we often do not consider this Arab invasion as a major achievement. It is not considered as a very major event in Indian history, at least in political terms. At least in political terms. Why? Because the major capital which could have increased the influence of Islam, that was the capital name was Kannauj. Because since the time of Harshvardhana, Kannauj was the main capital of the region of North India. जब तक नॉर्थ इंडिया का वो वाला एरिया वो कैप्चर नहीं करते, कोई ज्यादा बड़ा इम्पैक्ट आने वाला नहीं है. तो सिंध इज ऑफन कंसिडर्ड एज अ माइनर एपिसोड इन इंडियन हिस्ट्री. एक छोटा सा एपिसोड हम इसको मानते हैं, इसलिए हिस्टोरियंस को बोलते भी इट वाज अ ट्रायम्फ विदाउट रिजल्ट्स. ट्रायम्फ मतलब दे वॉन इन दिस बैटल, बट विदाउट रिजल्ट का मतलब क्या है? तो बहुत बड़ा पॉलिटिकल आउटकम आया नहीं. इनफैक्ट हुआ क्या, आफ्टर दैट मीर काजिम डाइड वेरी अर्ली. ठीक है ना? तो मोहम्मद काजिम ही डाइड वेरी अर्ली. वंस ही डाइड अर्ली, naturally the expansion stopped. The expansion stopped after that, and finally the Arabs lived in this area for some time. One very important thing is it led to cultural connect between Arabs and Indians. That's the most important outcome of this whole Arab invasion. In fact, these Arabs were very smart. They copied all our texts. ठीक है ना? In fact, all the Indian numerals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, they were copied by them, and from there it went towards the Europe. And बाद में यूरोप जो थे, the people of Europe started giving the credit to the Arabs, है ना? कि अरब्स ने पूरा का पूरा मैथमेटिक्स डिजाइन किया है. वहीं बाद में पता चला धीरे धीरे करके नो, अरब्स themselves have copied from the multiple texts. They were copied by these Arabs, and this through the Arabs eventually India was now linked with the Europe at the cultural level, not at the level of politics, not at the level of any empire creation, only at the level of culture. Similarly, from the Arabs, we see the beginning of the use of, like, suppose the dry land cultivation. The dry land cultivation वगैरह जो होता है वो सारी टेक्निक किससे सीखा हम लोगों ने? अरब से सीखा. Arabs also ensured monetization of economy. The new coins were now issued by ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स के लिए भी थोड़ा सा, once it got stabilized, it became good for even trade and commerce. ठीक है? ये सारी की सारी चीजें यहाँ से कुछ पॉजिटिव नजर आती हैं, बट इसका कोई इतना बड़ा यूज नहीं था इन पॉलिटिकल टर्म्स. ठीक है? इसलिए याद रखना, the people in the west did not know how to use the use of zero, and through the Arabs, they got these numerals from 0 to 9. इसलिए देखो क्या है ना कि एंशियंट इंडिया की साइंस एंड टेक को बहुत ज्यादा लोग तारीफ करते हैं, साइंस एज वेल एज मैथमेटिक्स, बिकॉज द काइंड ऑफ नॉलेज विच वाज देयर विद द पीपल ऑफ इंडिया, वी वर अहेड ऑफ अदर्स, फार अहेड ऑफ अदर्स. इनफैक्ट इट इज बिकॉज ऑफ दीज न्यूमरल व्हेन दे वेंट टुवर्ड द वेस्ट, बाद में जाके सब बहुत लोगों ने अपने अपने लॉज बनाए, लाइक न्यूटन हो गया, बाद में केप्लर हो गए. हर किसी ने किस चीज का यूज किया? उसी मैथमेटिक्स की नॉलेज को यूज किया गया जो कहाँ से आई थी? India as well. That's why the importance of information, not just in this, There were n number of books in Sanskrit on astronomy, philosophy, mathematics, okay, and even medicine. सब के सब को किसमें चेंज कर दिया? Arabic. And through Arabs it went towards, and naturally the culture it shares, right? The culture started sharing, and Arabs they also learned the game of chess only from the Indians. है ना, पिछले कुछ एक दो साल से हम लोग चेस में अच्छा कर रहे हैं, है ना. फाइनली वी आर रियलाइजिंग कि हमारे यहाँ से चेस शुरू हुआ था. तो चेस ऑल्सो वाज लर्न फ्रॉम द. तो इंडिया का बहुत ज़्यादा जो कल्चरल पार्ट था ना वो धीरे धीरे करके अरब्स के थ्रू यूरोप में पहुंच गया. तो इस पूरे जो इवेंट है जिसमें कि अरब्स आर एबल टू कैप्चर द रीजन ऑफ सिंध, इट हैड मोर कल्चरल आउटकम rather than any kind of political outcome for the Indian subcontinent. That's why इसका कोई बहुत बड़ा आउटकम पॉलिटिकल एरिया में हमें देखने को. Why we did not see? Because in case of India, we were having these three dynasties, okay, who were rising at this point of time. One was Palas, the second was Pratiharas, and the last one is Rashtrakuta. So these were the three major powers. These were the three major powers. If the Arabs would have wanted to capture the whole of India, they were required to defeat Palas, Pratiharas as well as Rashtrakuta. Without that, nothing was possible. Right? So now we'll discuss about these three dynasties, who were their founders, what were their specific kinds of ideas. Let us try to understand about these three dynasties. Okay? And these three dynasties will be responsible for what is known as the tripartite struggle. Okay? Let us see the broad map. Okay? Can you see this? This area was under the control of Pratiharas. Okay? This was the area under the control of Rashtrakutas, and towards the eastern, this is the region of Palas. Okay, so broadly they begin one in the west, one in the east, and the other in the Deccan region. And this is bound to create lots of challenges for each other. The first dynasty that we'll talk about it is the Palas. Okay, let us try to understand few things about the Palas. So Palas they rose in the region of the Bengal, right? The Bengal and the Bihar region. Before them, the last major ruler was Shashanka. After the death of Shashanka, there was no major ruler. He was ruling from the region of Gauda. The ancient Bengal was known by the name of Gauda. After this, we see the rise of the ruler. The name is Gopala. So Gopala was an elected king. उनको choose किया गया था election के through, and that's how he came to power. The group of chief elected Gopala, and he became the king. This is how we see the beginning of the Pala dynasty. What's the time period? Around 750. Okay. And we also get this, that he overcame a demoness that had killed previous candidate. We do not know what the meaning of this. ना कि बहुत सारे यहाँ पे छलावे थे जिनको इन्होंने defeat किया, and that's how he came to power. Initially, he was prominent in which region of Bengal? Eastern part of Bengal. And with the period of time, we see its rise. Okay. And what was the capital of this dynasty? Patliputra. Patliputra remains its capital. Plus the languages Sanskrit, Prakrit as well as Pali. And one very important thing, they were the promoter of Mahayana Buddhism. In general studies, once UPSC asked this question, what was the contribution of Palas in the spread of Buddhism in the world? They were responsible for sending these monks to China. They were responsible for sending them far and wide. And the main form of Buddhism that they believed in, Mahayana Buddhism. What's the meaning of Mahayana Buddhism? This is one of the major school of Buddhism, which believes in 4 or 5 key things. Number one, they consider Buddha as a god. That's number one. Number two, they believe in image worship. They believe in the concept of Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva means where the people delay their own enlightenment in order to help the others. So that's an element of compassion. भाई आप अपना थोड़ा सा टाइम ज़्यादा ले रहे हो on the earth in order to help the other people around you. So these ideas are major part of Mahayana form of Buddhism. Okay, and Mahayana form of Buddhism, the text started going towards Sanskrit. Initially जब हम बात करते हैं हिनयाना बुद्धिज्म, उसके मेजॉरिटी टेक्स्ट आज भी किसमें है? पाली में है. But Mahayana Buddhism with the period of time when it began, it started shifting towards Sanskrit. तो ये कुछ 3-4 important pointers हैं उनके बीच में जो differences. So Gopala was the founder. He ruled for 20 years. But one of the most important personality in this dynasty is Dharmapala. Dharmapala, once he came to power, He ruled for next 45 years. So it was a very long reign. In fact, he ruled both Bengal as well as Bihar region, right? And on the seat of Kannauj, one of his nominee used to rule. So with the initially the region of Kannauj came under the control of Palas, and Dharmapala was the person responsible for that. Okay, he was even able to defeat the rulers of Punjab, Rajputana, Malwa. Okay, and they accepted his suzerainty. Suzerainty means they accepted that you are our overlord. भाई हमारे राजा आप, इवन दो उन लोगों के पास ऑटोनॉमी रहेगी. इस वर्ड को हमेशा याद रखना. There is a difference between suzerainty and sovereignty. Sovereignty means you are independent. Okay, suzerainty means you are accepting someone else's overlordship. आप मानते हो कि वो आपसे बड़े राजा, तो वर्ड को क्या बोलते हैं? सुजरेंटी. बहुत बच्चे सुजरेंटी और सॉवरेंटी दोनों मिक्स करके लिखना चालू कर देते हैं एज पर द जो मन में लिख दिया. ये मत करना. सुजरेंटी मीन्स एक्सेप्टिंग द ओवरलॉर्डशिप. बहुत सारे टाइटल्स दिए इन्होंने, जैसे कि गुप्ता पीरियड पे टाइटल दिया था. गुप्ता में क्या टाइटल थे? परमेश्वर, परम भद्रका, महाराजा दी राजा. तो दोज काइंड्स ऑफ टाइटल्स वर टेकन. Those kinds of titles were taken even at this point of time. Okay, अगर हम बात करें बुद्धिज्म की, so he was the one responsible for founding Vikramshila. So Vikramshila was one of the most important university of that time period, and its focus was only on one specific part, Mahayan form of Buddhism. Okay, he also built a monastery at Udantapuri in the region of Bihar, built viharas at Somapura. Somapura Mahavihara आज एक जगह है, and this place is currently in Bangladesh. So there also monasteries were made. In fact, it is a site which is given recognition by UNESCO also. UNESCO lists the World Heritage Sites के. So even today, Somapura Mahavihara is a World Heritage Site in the region of Bangladesh. Okay? But वो बांग्लादेश के अंदर. ठीक है. He also gave patronage to Harish Bhadra, who was a famous Buddhist writer. This is the profile of Dharmapala. This is the profile of Dharmapala. He was the one, right? After Dharmapala, we had Devapala. Devapala again is the son of the Dharmapala. Continued eastward expansion and went all the way up to Assam. The previous name of Assam was Kamrup. ठीक है, तो कामरूप वर्ड कभी कभार प्रीलिम्स में दे देते हैं आप. इधर कामरूप रीजन किस से लिंक्ड है, तो आपको पता होना चाहिए कि मॉडर्न स्टेट कौन सी है. कामरूप इज लिंक्ड टू Assam. And he also defeated Amoghavasha. Amoghavasha is one of the ruler of Rashtrakuta. तो उसको defeat कर दिया था इन्होंने. He again continued the support to Buddhism. Like he gave the 5 villages to Balaputra Devana. He was the king of Shalanda dynasty. तो उनको वहाँ पे monastery open करनी थी. ठीक है, और उस monastery को चलाने के लिए उन्होंने क्या कितने villages दिए थे? 5 villages were given by him. Okay, and Nalanda continued to flourish even during this time period. So this was the time period of Devapala. Then many small rulers came, like we had Vikramapala, then we have Narayanpala, and later on they became relatively very weak. And they later on little bit of reinstatement was done, but they fell down. The main person who was responsible for the decline was the person by the name of Mihir Bhoj. So Mihir Bhoj was a very strong personality, and he was able to destroy the Palas. And the later Pala rulers were not able to fight against. This is the end of the Pala dynasty. Okay, and even though they had these small rulers like Mahipala I, okay, but this was the end. The Pala dynasty was finally taken over by Vijayasena, and he started which dynasty? Sena dynasty. Sena dynasty यहाँ से शुरू हो जाती है. तो लास्ट रूलर है उनका नाम है मदनपाल. क्या नाम है? मदनपाला. प्रीलिम्स में फैक्ट्स की जरूरत होती है. जैसे मान लीजिए अगर हम मेंस के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से देखें, तो मेंस के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू में इतने ज्यादा फैक्ट नहीं याद करने पड़ते कि सबके नाम बता. हम सिर्फ 2-3 रूलर्स के ऊपर फोकस करते हैं. हाँ, धर्मपाला, देवपाला, बस ये 2 हमारे सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट रूलर. एट द मैक्स आप फाउंडर का नाम याद रखें. इसलिए ऑप्शनल के अंदर अननेसेसरी फैक्ट याद करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती. जीएस में क्या होता है कि आप लोग हर छोटा छोटा फैक्ट याद करने की कोशिश करते हो, फिर परेशान होकर छोड़ भी देते हो. वो चीज ऑप्शनल में नहीं होगी. ऑप्शनल इज ऑलवेज अबाउट रिफाइनमेंट. ऑप्शनल का सबसे मेन काम है वो एनालिसिस. इट्स नॉट जस्ट अबाउट डिटेल. तो उसमें आप सिर्फ हमेशा ये आदत बना लीजिए, अपने ओरिजिन जिसका है, जो फाउंडर है उसका नाम याद रखना है, लास्ट रूलर का नाम याद रखना है, एंड ओनली 2-3 मेजर इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स. दैट्स इट. आंसर राइटिंग में उससे ज्यादा की जरूरत कभी नहीं पड़ेगी. ठीक है, The religion that they were giving patronage to was Mahayan form of Buddhism. Okay. Then next dynasty that we have is Pratiharas. Okay. They are also known as Gujjara Pratiharas. That's why many people say they probably originated from Gujjar. The Gujjar, they were the pastoral. Pastoral means who practice animal husbandry. So they probably came from the Gujras, and their founder is known as Nagabhat first. He is considered as the founder of this dynasty, and he was the one who defended the western part of the region of Rajasthan from where Arab invaders. So Nagabhat first is a very important person. Their capital initially was in the region of Bhinman. That's why you will also find this, like when you read NCERT, Pratiharas of Bhinman. Bhinman is the area from where they origin. Later on, they will go towards Kannauj. Later on, they will go towards Kannauj. The Kannauj is going to become the major area for the fight. Okay. Then after this, what we see that these Pratiharas, they had to fought with two major kings of Rashtrakutas. Okay, that were Dhruv as well as Gopal III, and that is going to create a big challenge for them. Okay, because the Pratiharas were defeated by Rashtrakutas. That is going to be a big challenge for them. Okay? The most profound ruler is Bhoj. Okay, he is often also known as Mihir Bhoj. So Bhoj was a very prominent ruler of this dynasty. In fact, around 836, he was able to capture Kannauj. He was able to capture Kannauj. Okay, even though he was defeated by Devpala once, but still he remained a very strong leader. He focused on central India and even focused on the region of Deccan, and he had a very strong struggle with Rashtrakutas in this region. After the death of Devpala, he became even more stronger. Okay, and he is often considered as the empire builder. And the word we often use is Mihir Bhoj. Like last to last year in prelims, UPSC gave this question. एक साइड में सिर्फ किंग्स के नाम दिए थे और राइट हैंड साइड में कौन सी डायनेस्टी को, तो नागभट्ट फर्स्ट का नाम भी दिया हुआ था, मिहिर भोज का नाम भी दिया हुआ। एक राजा भोज हमारे परमार उज्जैन के भी, इसीलिए इनको हम अलग से क्या बोलते हैं, मिहिर भोज बोलते हैं। ठीक है, इसलिए ये वर्ड यूज किया जाता है। ही वॉज द फॉलोवर ऑफ विष्णु एंड दैट्स व्हाई द टाइटल वाज आदि वराह। ही वॉज द फॉलोवर ऑफ विष्णु, इसलिए आदि वराह जो है वो टाइटल इन्होंने अज्यूम किया था। His son was Mahendrapal first, and he further increased the area under the control. And many inscription talks about how he was able to capture Kathiawar all the way up to the east part of Punjab as well as towards the region of Awadh. तो पूरा का पूरा जो नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न सेगमेंट है पूरा का पूरा महेंद्रपाला ने कैप्चर कर लिया। If we see the cultural contribution, okay, so these Pratiharas, they also believed in learning and literature. Now the famous Kavi or the famous person was Rajshekhar, and he lived in the court of Mahipala. And they also saw that Kannauj was going to have many large number of buildings as well as temples. Okay, and they were having scholarly exchange with other parts also. Okay, then later on, as all of us understand, Pratihara came under attack from Rashtrakutas. Like one person was Indra III. He was the king of Rashtrakutas. He attacked, and that broke the backbone of this empire. And later on also, they were able to lose Gujarat. And finally, Krishna III, he invaded North India in 963, and that was the end of this Pratihara empire. And after the decline of these Pratiharas, we see the rise of multiple Rajput dynasties. Multiple Rajput dynasties. Okay, they are going to rise after this. When we see the Rashtrakutas are known for what? Fight with Pratiharas. Number two, the Kannauj conquest, and finally the overall lineage where they come from. In their case, they first fought with whom? They fought with the Chalukyas. They were initially under the control of Chalukyas of Badami, जिसके बारे में हमने कल बात किया. ठीक है? All of you remember Pulkesin first, Pulkesin second, the important rulers. So they used to be under them. Finally, the person who was able to make them independent was Danti Durga. Danti Durga was the person, right, who was able to build an empire, and after him, right, after him, Eventually, it was taken forward by his uncle, right? After him, his uncle's name was Krishna first. So he was the major person who solidified the whole power in this region. In fact, Krishna first, he consolidated by defeating the Gangas of Mysore. उनको defeat भी किया. And one of the most famous temple was built. उसको इन्होंने start करवाया. Krishna first. ठीक है? The famous temple that we have at Ellora by the name of Kailashnath. कैलाशनाथ टेम्पल जो है वो कृष्ण फर्स्ट ने ही स्टार्ट किया था. देन गोविंद सेकंड, ही वाज अ प्रोमिनेंट पर्सनालिटी एंड ही डिफीटेड द ईस्टर्न चालुक्यास. उनको डिफीट किया इन्होंने एंड ही लेफ्ट all affairs to his brother Dhruv. And Dhruv also continued the power of expansion. In fact, many people say that power reached its zenith during the time of Dhruv, and it was Dhruv who was able to defeat Shantivarman, who was the ruler of Pallava. He was also able to defeat the rulers of Vengi region. So he created a very strong kind of a personality for himself. He also was able to defeat in the north. Govind III was also a strong ruler, right? And he was the one who also subdued Dantika, who was a Pallava king, right? And Vishnuvardhana, the ruler of the Vengi. All of them, they were subdued. Amogvarsha. Now, Amogvarsha was a person with different kind of personality. He was a very religious person, and he did not believe in warfare. But still, there was warfare which was going on with the Western Gangas during his time. In fact, he was the person who wrote one of the most famous texts in the कन्नड़ रीजन. कल किसी ने पूछा था ना कन्नड़ लैंग्वेज का एक्सपेंशन किस तरीके से, कैसे लैंग्वेजेस इंप्रूव हुई फॉर पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. तो कन्नड़ का जो यूटिलाइजेशन है वो 4th-5th सेंचुरी से शुरू होता है, लेकिन उसमें जो कंपोजिशन है सबसे ज्यादा वो कौन से पीरियड में मिलती है? अर्ली मिडिएवल पीरियड में. जैसे इसके है कवि राजमार्ग. कवि राजमार्ग इज रिटन बाय अमोघवर्षा हिमसेल्फ, एंड दिस इज अ बुक, वन ऑफ द अर्लीस्ट बुक इन द कन्नड़. तो उसके रिलेटेड इन्होंने लिखा है. ठीक है. रेस्ट देयर वर मल्टीपल पीपल हु वर गिवन पैट्रनेज बाय हिम, लाइक we had Jinasena, right? He did a large number of compositions. Then large number of victories were there of the Krishna III. And finally, they were also able to defeat even the Cholas. The Chola army of Rajaditya, it was defeated in the battle of Takulam. उनको defeat भी कर दिया था और एक victory pillar भी बनाया था. ठीक है. This victory pillar can be seen where Rameshwaram. But after this, we see the rise of Cholas. Cholas में दो बहुत prominent personalities है. कौन कौन? Raja Raja and Rajendra Chola. Those are going to rise towards the end of 10th century, around 986 AD. You see the accession of Raja Raja Chola. Once Raja Raja Chola is going to come into picture, the Rashtrakutas are going to get completely destroyed by that time. They were not having any existence after that. Anyway, the continued level of fighting which had between the Pratiharas, Palas and Rashtrakutas completely broke down central authority. कोई बची ही नहीं सेंट्रल अथॉरिटी की वजह से, और इसी रीजन की वजह से इट बिकम वेरी इजी, इट बिकम वेरी इजी फॉर देम टू द इन्वेडर्स, स्पेसिफिकली द टर्किश पीपल, टू कम एंड रूल ओवर इंडिया. ये है, दिस इज नोन एज द कैलाशनाथ टेम्पल. इट्स अ वेरी सिग्निफिकेंट टेम्पल. रीजन बीइंग इट इज बिल्ट फ्रॉम द टॉप. इसको हम बोलते हैं मोनोलिथिक टेम्पल. मोनोलिथिक मीन्स एक ही स्टोन था, एक ही स्टोन को देखो कितने तरीके से उन्होंने कट करके ऊपर से बनाया. That's a significant achievement. In fact, there's a story that Aurangzeb wanted to destroy this. Okay, rope वगैरह लेके पहुंचे थे इसके ऊपर, चलाई भी थी, लेकिन it is made of a very hard stone, so it could not get affected by that. Right? So Kailashnath temple is very very famous, and this is a part of Ellora cave. ये उसी का ही एक specific kind of sculptures है जो उसी के अंदर मिलते हैं. ठीक है. So with respect to architecture, the best caves with respect to architecture they are Ellora caves. बेस्ट केस विद रिस्पेक्ट टू पेंटिंग आर अजंता केस. ध्यान रखना, अजंता जो है वो सिर्फ बुद्धिस्ट से रिलेटेड, बट एलोरा हैज अ मिक्सचर ऑफ ऑल थ्री. ठीक है. इसके अंदर ब्रॉडली 34 केव्स, 34 caves are there. First 12 caves they belong to Buddhism, then 13 to 29 they belong to Hinduism, the last 5 caves 30 to 34 they belong to Jainism. So broadly आपकी 34 caves है. It's a very unique example of peaceful kind of approach between the religion or a secular kind of a architecture. Right? Why we are using the word secular? Because Indian secularism says there should be equal patronage for all. So that's the kind of architecture which we see here. Okay? A syncretic kind of a idea is there. this region. That's the famous, these are the Elephanta caves that we have, okay? And in the Elephanta caves, we find this famous form which is known as Ardhi Naleshwar, half man, half woman. So this form of Shiva is found here at the region of Elephanta. You also find this Mahesh Murti. Why is it called Elephanta? Because it looks like a elephant. And the word Elephanta was given by the Portuguese. The Portuguese came towards India. उनको दिखा भाई ये तो एलिफेंट है, एलिफेंट की तरह दिख रहा है, तो नाम क्या रख दिया? एलिफेंटा। तो तब से आज तक क्या जानते हैं इसको? एलिफेंटा के। ऐसे ही नाम पढ़ते हैं, है ना? किसी ने कुछ भी कह दिया और आज भी ऐसे ही चलता रहा। जॉन मार्शल ने मोहनजोदड़ो में जाके देखा, है ना, तो गर्ल का स्कल्पचर, बोला डांसिंग गर्ल, है ना? तो आज तक वही चल रहा है, डांसिंग गर्ल। पता नहीं वो डांस कर भी रही थी कि नहीं, इट वाज जस्ट अ पोज, बट एक बार बोल दिया। इनफैक्ट जॉन मार्शल हैड लर्न हिंदी एंड ही सेड नाच गर्ल, ठीक है ना, उन्होंने कहा था नाच गर्ल, और वो आज तक क्या चलता है? डांसिंग गर्ल के चलता है। तो हर चीज का जैसे नेम किस तरीके से हुआ, उसके पीछे भी अपनी अपनी स्टोरीज, ठीक है। तो as we were discussing that during the early medieval period, when we discuss the political features, there are certain things which are the characteristics. So one was feudalism, the second characteristic was that of tripartite struggle. Now we'll go into the invasion, the second invasion, that is Turkish invasion. Okay, so let us try to understand that. When we discuss about Turkish invasion, we try to understand two important personalities. First is Mahmud, the second is Ghuri. Mahmud Ghazni. Okay, so two people are there. Now Ghazni, he was a person who was all about wealth. Okay, when he came to power, he said, I will raid India every year. इन्होंने अपनी हॉबी बना ली थी, किसको रेड करेंगे? इंडिया को रेड करेंगे। नहीं, रेडेड अस अराउंड 17 टाइम्स, एक दो बार तो किया नहीं, 25-26 साल की रेन है, 17 बार तो कर दिया, तो कंसिस्टेंट थे काम में, 17 टाइम्स तो कर ही दिया। Guri, when he came to India, he was having an objective of creating empire. There was a difference in the approach of Mahmud of Ghazni and Muhammad of Ghuri. There was a difference in the approach. He used to see India as a piggy bank. यहाँ पे क्या मिल रहा है? पैसा मिल रहा है ना? And try to understand this. In those times, wealth used to be with temples, wealth used to be with monasteries. Okay, and these were the least guarded structures. Nobody used to guard them. So for people like Mahmud, these were like piggy banks. क्या हो, सबसे ज्यादा पैसा कहाँ मिलेगा? Temples and monasteries. And by their very nature, he was not going to have any kind of अफसोस कि लोगों को बुरा लगेगा. What will happen to them when you're going to destroy their temples or destroy their monasteries? That's why you need to remember this, because sometimes there's a lot of politics. पॉलिटिक्स ये कहती है कि मैंने जानबूझ के किया, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. बट सपोज थिंक लाइक एन इन्वेडर, यू कमिंग फ्रॉम आउटसाइड, आपके पास थोड़ा सा टाइम है, उसके अंदर आपने पैसा उठाना और निकलना है ना. वेयर वुड यू गो? पूरे राजा से लड़के उसके वहां से लेके जाओगे? दैट्स अ डिफिकल्ट टास्क. द अदर टास्क इज डायरेक्टली अटैक द प्लेसेस व्हिच हैव मनी और व्हिच हैव द गोल्ड. लाइक इफ यू सी द हिंदू टेम्पल्स, उनके पास इतना गोल्ड है ना, कि वो आराम से, मतलब कुछ टाइम तक तो पूरे इंडिया का खर्चा उठा सकते. द अमाउंट ऑफ वेल्थ दैट दे आर हैविंग, बिकॉज पीपल दे गो, दे फील, श्रद्धा रहती है. और बहुत ज्यादा क्या होता है उसके हिसाब से, आप लोग भी पेपर से पहले बहुत सारे एकदम से, है ना, अपने लेवल का जितना इन्वेस्टमेंट, ये मेरा छोटा सा इन्वेस्टमेंट, सब जैसे ही पास कर दोगे हर मंगलवार या फिर हर सोमवार में आपके पास आऊंगा, और जिस दिन पास हो गए उस दिन से दिखोगे नहीं. कर चुके हो ना ये सब तुम पहले, ऑलरेडी 10th में कर चुके हो, 12th में कर चुके हो ना, रिश्वत दे चुके हो बहुत बार, तो उन्होंने भी थोड़ा सुनना छोड़ दिया. देखेंगे टाइम के साथ में. बट ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड, इवन दो वी आर नॉट टेकिंग इट फ्रॉम द पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ऑफ लाइक फेथ, वी आर टेकिंग जस्ट फ्रॉम द पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ऑफ स्ट्रेटजी. So if you see from the point of view of strategy, these people were very clear. Mahmud of Ghazni, he was clear he wanted wealth, while Guri wanted to create power. Let us now see what are their actions, what kind of raids these people are going to have in India. So when we talk about Ghazni, okay, when we talk about Ghazni, this Ghazni eventually emerged out of a kingdom which is known as Samanid Kingdom, right? So this Arab empire, which was including this Samanid Kingdom, started declining, and one specific area became separate from the others. उसको lead कौन कर रहे थे? Alaptigin. Alaptigin was the person who was leading it. Okay, and कौन सा empire इन्होंने बनाया? Ghazni in eastern Afghanistan. Once Alaptigin started this went further, and the next person who was strong, his name was Tabuktigin. Now Tabuktigin was the father of Ghazni. ये तीन नाम याद रखिए, ठीक है? सबसे पहले कौन है? Alaptigin, then we have Tabuktigin, and the last person which is going to enter after his death is Mahmud of Ghazni. तीन नाम मैं हमेशा याद कराता हूँ कि भाई स्टार्ट करो Alaptigin से, so around 963 you see the establishment of this place known as Ghazni, and this is in the eastern part of Afghanistan. Okay, it's in the eastern part of Afghanistan. Okay, so Alaptigin, Tabuktigin, and the last one, which is important for us, that is at the turn of the century, that person is Mahmud. Okay, so this is the roughly around 40 years of rule, after which he comes to power. And Mahmud, he was the son of Tabuktigin. Okay, he was the son of Tabuktigin. Now the dynasty which was ruling over the region of Pakistan at that point of time and some part of Afghanistan, इसको हम बोलते थे हिंदू शाही डायनेस्टी. क्या बोलते थे? हिंदू शाही डायनेस्टी बोलते थे. The ruler who was there, his name was Jaipal. Now Jaipal was the one who was going to face the brunt of these invaders. So सबसे पहले महमूद, once he came to power, okay, around 997, in fact he defeated his younger brother who was trying to become the king. His name was Ismail. उनको defeat किया गया. Mahmud came to power, and Mahmud was hardly 27 years. Okay, he was hardly 27 years when he came to power. After he came to power, he also tried to get investiture from Caliph. Investiture means मंसूर बोलते थे कि भाई एक तरीके से recognition मिल जाएगा. क्या बोलते हैं इसको? Investiture. देखो, किसी भी सब्जेक्ट में अच्छे मार्क्स लाने का एक ही तरीका है, उसकी क्या याद करनी पड़ेगी? वोकैबुलरी. पूरे मीडिया में वर्ड यूज होता है. इन्वेस्टिगेशन मींस रिकॉग्निशन गिवन बाय होम? कैलिफ. सेम चीज बाद में इल्तुतमिश करेंगे तो एक ट्रेडिशन बन जाएगा, एक ट्रेडिशन बन जाएगा कि भाई अगर आप लोगों के दिल में अच्छी जगह बनाना चाहते हो या फिर चाहते हो कि भाई सब आपको रिकॉग्नाइज करें, तो आपको किससे इन्वेस्टिचर लेना चाहिए? कैलिफ. वो वहां से एक रोब भेजते थे, ठीक है, और कभी कभार टाइटल भी देते थे. लाइक विद रिस्पेक्ट टू महमूद, टाइटल गिवन वाज यामिनी उद दौला, मींस राइट हैंड ऑफ द एम्पायर. उनको राइट हैंड ऑफ द एम्पायर बोल दिया गया. So Mahmud became a very ferocious kind of a personality, very skilled military personality, and he was the one who was now going to go for multiple raids. And one dynasty which is going to face a challenge is Hindu Shahi dynasty. This Hindu Shahi dynasty was ruling over the region of Afghanistan and Pakistan region that we have today. And the first line of defense is this Hindu Shahi dynasty. And two people are going to face the challenge, both son and father. The son's father name was Jaipal, and the son name was Anpal. Okay, so please remember, Mahmud ruled for how many years? 32 years. And during this period, he conducted as many as 17 military campaigns into India. और एक ही इनका सबसे बड़ा टारगेट था वास्ट ट्रेजर. सब दे दो मुझे, ठीक है? वाई? देखो उसके पीछे भी लॉजिक समझो. Afghanistan is not a very rich region in resources. It's a area which is highly mountainous. तो इंडिया की तरह वहां पे प्लेन्स नहीं है इस लेवल पर, और इवन पाकिस्तान की तरह भी प्लेन्स नहीं है. तो उसको बस एक ही चीज में इंटरेस्ट था, किसी भी तरीके से पैसा बाहर से ले आओ, राजा लेकिन मैं यहीं का बन गया। He didn't want to create empire in India. He was a homesick person. आता था, लूटा और फिर वापस, है ना, अपने हिसाब से जिंदगी जीनी, यहाँ पर नहीं जाता। तो मेन मोटिव was to loot. There was also a military advantage in demolishing these temples. All of you understand the meaning of jihad? Yes? What's the meaning of jihad? So jihad means holy war. Okay? The concept of jihad means holy war. Whenever something is declared as a jihad, it becomes a moral duty for Muslims to follow it. And this concept of jihad was used on a very large scale, many of the military personalities. Like if you see the case of Mahmud, what he used to do, he used to consider these battles as jihad. That it is a duty of every soldier to fight on my behalf. So that they can increase the prestige of Islam. So even if he was having his own motive, पैसा मुझे चाहिए, लेकिन लोगों को तो बता देना, हाँ ठीक है, this is a jihad. So that's why the concept of jihad was often utilized to motivate the soldiers. The same was done by Babar also later on. And this used to work. This used to work. Okay, because these used to be filled with emotions, they used to be filled with courage. Because they used to think it is a direct kind of a order from the God. Not always. Not always. Look, now it is up to us individual personality how to see. Like there was a very beautiful explanation from Shah Rukh Khan once. Shah Rukh Khan is not a scholar, but still he gave a good interpretation. Right? He said, I consider jihad as something against my own enemy, which I create in my own mind. Now that's a good interpretation for individual personality. Like see, all of us, we hate ourselves sometimes, and we do things which we should not do. So we consider that jihad is against my own laziness. And it's against my lack of ambition. So if you see at that level, I don't think it's a bad concept. But when Pakistan specifically, अब देखो दिक्कत क्या होती है, एक स्टेट ने एक ही मोटिव बना रखा है, इंडिया को बर्बाद करना। उसको उसको करने के लिए वो इस्लाम को भी बुरा नाम देने को तैयार। It's not about Islam, it's about the state. The state is doing such kind of actions कि भाई मदरसास के अंदर वही चीजें पढ़ाई जाती, which completely brainwash people. So that is not something which is written in the Quran. That is something which these people want on purpose. They want on purpose. Do you know all the military personalities? Military क्यों नहीं जाती पाकिस्तान को? Military के जितने भी लोग हैं, उनकी सारी फैमिलीज यूके में सेटल, सारी फैमिलीज यूके में सेटल्ड है उनकी, ठीक है? एंड वहां पे आके वो क्या करते हैं, इंडिया को तोड़ देंगे, ये कर देंगे। क्यों? दे वांट टू कंटिन्यू देयर लेगेसी। दे आल्सो नो द डे दिस इज गोइंग टू चेंज, मिलिट्री की पावर क्या हो जाएगी, जीरो। और पूरी भी नहीं यार, इस दुनिया में इररिलेवेंट नहीं होना। और लीस्ट ऑफ देम आर दीज मिलिट्री पीपल। ओनली वन अनसाइंड, वी आल्सो हैव वेरी प्रोफेशनल मिलिट्री, राइट? और हमारी मिलिट्री शांति से तबीयत से अपना काम करती है इन ए वेरी एनोनिमस मैनर। मतलब जब सबसे लास्ट में हमें लाके कॉन्फ्रेंस में उनको बैठना पड़ता है, तब पता चला होगा इंडिया के अंदर की कौन, और वहां के मिलिट्री जनरल हमें पहले दिन से पता है। फ्रॉम द फर्स्ट डे वी नो दैट कि भाई वहां कौन है। इट्स लाइक, सो व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, लाइक लुक, every religion has its own time. Buddhism was a very forward social reform oriented religion in the 6th century when Buddha was there. It was taken to further height by Ashoka by giving the positive philosophy of Dhamma. उसको और आगे लेके चले गए वो, ठीक है? लेकिन बाद में जब 9th सेंचुरी एडी तक आने जब मोनेस्ट्रीज के अंदर ही अल्कोहल चलने लग गया, सारे सोशल रिफॉर्म्स चले गए। Islam was the most forward religion in the 7th century because it did not believe in inequality. It believed in brotherhood in 7th century. फॉर द नेक्स्ट 2-3 सेंचुरी व्हाई इस्लाम रोज सो फास्ट, बिकॉज इसने क्या किया, ब्रदरहुड इक्वालिटी के ऊपर सबसे ज्यादा फोकस। बट विद द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम व्हाट हैपेंस एक्चुअली कि उसके जो फंडामेंटल प्रिंसिपल्स हैं उनको आप भूल जाते हो और आसपास के एरिया को बस याद करना शुरू करो। जैसे हमारे राइट टू फ्रीडम ऑफ रिलीजन है इंडिया के, एज पर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑल ऑफ अस हैव, बट सुप्रीम कोर्ट आल्सो सेज देयर आर सम कोर प्रिंसिपल्स एंड सम नॉन कोर प्रिंसिपल्स। Jihad is not a core principle. If somebody is shaming that you're following Islam just because there's a concept of jihad, that is not right. Because this concept, now you go to USC, you go to many countries of Europe, you'll find people following Islam without these kinds of actions which are happening in Pakistan. Because they follow their religion without these kinds of indoctrination which are happening on purpose. दे ऑल्सो नो ना कि अगर किसी को बेवकूफ बनाना तो रिलीजन के नाम पे बनाना सबसे आसान तरीका होता है। सबसे आसान तरीका ये है ना, बिकॉज इफ यू मेक समथिंग एज योर मोरल मिशन देन देयर इज नथिंग बिगर देन दैट। सबसे बड़ी मोटिवेशन जिंदगी में मोरल होती है। सबसे बड़ी मोटिवेशन पैसा कभी नहीं मिल सकती, बिकॉज पैसा एक टाइम पे आके आपको छोड़ा जी लेंगे, क्या करेंगे इतने पैसे का, मतलब होते ना अंगूर खट्टे हैं, ठीक है। लेकिन इफ सपोज God comes and gives you responsibility, you have to clear civil services for me. Suddenly एक moral responsibility ऐसी दे दी गई है कि अब आप पीछे नहीं हट सकते। So that's why whenever you have a moral responsibility, इसलिए indoctrination करने में सबसे आसान तरीका ये है। पैसे में क्या होगा, मान लीजिए वहां से 5 लाख मिला, हमारे यहाँ 10 लाख मिल गया, फिर जाएगा, घूम जाएगा। हमारे पास तो है ना बहुत बड़े रॉयल सलमान खान, है ना, घूम जाएंगे वो लोग। So money can always, the person who is just motivated by money can be easily bought off. लेकिन जिसके पास सपने हो, जिसके पास इस तरीके का इंडोक्ट्रिनेशन आ जाए, उसको हटाना बहुत ही। What do you think about these people? Like suppose the 4 or the 5 terrorists who were there in Pahilgaon. Do you think even a single element of humanity was there in it? मान सकते हो कोई भी एक भी सिंगल एलिमेंट हो ह्यूमैनिटी का? मतलब मान लो किसी ने गुस्से में आके कभी बंदूक चला दी, मतलब जस्ट, बट दे वर डूइंग इट जस्ट लाइक एन ऑपरेशन कि भाई 1 2 3 4 5 6 जितना टाइम तक मौका मिलता, दे कुड हैव डन इट फॉर होल डे आल्सो। So what does that tell us? Is it about religion? It's not about religion. It's purely about one thing. They were trained for that, and they were here for sending some kind of an idea, and most prominent was to divide Hindus and Muslims. So don't think that it's always about religion. Religion, yes, it could influence, but religion by itself has only good things to spread in this. Religion themselves may be backward, that I agree. Religion themselves may be backward. They may not be open to easy modernization. So वो इस्लाम के साथ दिक्कत आई थी 19th century के आसपास. They were not open to modernization. Like see Hinduism, everybody accepted reforms very early in the 19th century, but that was not accepted in the Islam. In the Islam, the movements were going on like Deoband, Wahhabi movement, Parezi movement, which were more about the original Islam. तो मॉडर्नाइजेशन में दिक्कत हो सकता है, एक्सेप्टेंस कम हो सकती है, बट व्हेन वी डिस्कस अबाउट द बेसिक आइडिया ऑफ एवरी रिलीजन, दे आर मोर और लेस सेम। जो हमें देर देखो पॉलिटिक्स के ऑप्टिक्स से दिखाया था वो अलग है, जो रियलिटी में रिलीजन है वो अलग है। धीरे धीरे जो भी प्रैक्टिसेस बनी है इट्स मैन मेड। एंड इफ यू गो टुवर्ड्स पाकिस्तान, पाकिस्तान का तो एक ही एजेंडा है, सुबह उठो और गोली चला, एक ही एजेंडा है, उसके पास तो काम है क्या? तो है ना, खुद पैसे मांग रहा है, विक्ट्री है ना, हमारे साथ लड़ाई लड़ रहा है, उधर से हाथ भी जोड़ा प्लीज IMF प्लीज, है ना, ये तो ऐसे इन्होंने गलती करी है, तो उनके पास एजेंडा ही नहीं है। हम लोगों के पास एजेंडा है, बिलियंस ऑफ पीपल आर देयर इन इंडिया, पॉवर्टी हटानी है ना, सोशल इक्वालिटी लेके आनी है, वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट करना है, सैनिटेशन पे ध्यान देना है, हमारे पास बहुत काम है, हम उन पे ध्यान लगाते हैं। वो सुबह उठते हैं, चलो ये की काम है, इनको कैसे नीचे लेके आया जाए। अभी तो इस पर बहुत स्पष्ट वर्डों में बोला गया कि भाई एनी एक्ट ऑफ टेररिज्म इज गोइंग टू बी एक्ट ऑफ वॉर, बिकॉज दे डू इट आफ्टर एवरी 2-3 years। ठीक है, पहले करेंगे फिर 2-3 साल तक करेंगे, नहीं नहीं पीस टॉक पीस टॉक पीस टॉक, फिर एक कर देंगे। इनकी स्ट्रेटेजी रही है ये बहुत लंबे टाइम। इस बार क्यों नहीं हमने ये कहा कि भाई हम तुम्हें अपने यहाँ से फाइल्स भेजेंगे, कौन कौन से टेररिस्ट रिपोर्ट। अरे हमने मुंबई टेरर अटैक में भेजा, उसके बाद हमने आपका ये बीच में पुलवामा जो हुआ था उस टाइम पे भी भेजा था, आज तक कोई एक्शन नहीं लिया गया पाकिस्तान की तरफ। तो इस बार वी वर वेरी क्लियर। अब तो पाकिस्तान के चक्कर में टर्की अजरबैजान भी पिल गए। जो भाईजान पीछे ऐसे सपोर्ट करने है ना कि वो सारा टूरिज्म इंडिया से वो भी खत्म हो गया। तो अब तो हम बहुत क्लियर हैं किसको जो सपोर्ट करें। और अगर हम उससे टकरा सकते हैं, चाइना से तो नहीं सकते, वहां तो हमें भी अपने आप को देखना पड़ता है अपने की जबान में कि व्हाट वी कैन डू, बिकॉज हमारा भी इकोनॉमिक जो एक वो है ना पर्सपेक्टिव, वो चाइना को लेके अलग है। चाइना ऑल्सो हेल्प्स इन डेवलपमेंट ऑफ आर इकोनॉमी। कुछ देखो यार, सारा का सारा जो इम्पोर्ट्स है वो कहाँ से है? चाइना से। फिर हम प्रोसेस करके जो भी करें उसके साथ, चाइना इज एसेंशियल फॉर अस, पाकिस्तान इज नॉट, टर्की इज सडनली नॉट। एप्रिकॉट नहीं खाएंगे 4 दिन, क्या आता है टर्की से? 4 एप्रिकॉट आते हैं इंडिया के अंदर, बाकी और आता ही क्या ऐसा इतना इन्फ्लुएंशियल है ना। वहाँ के ड्रोन्स तो हमने देखे लिए, खरीदने नहीं कभी भी, है ना, एक काम नहीं आया उनका। तो whenever we talk about religion, religion has some basic idea, और आप कभी भी religion को ना उस तरीके से मत देखो that religion is going to be like always taking the decisions which are going to be in the hands of humanity. रिलीजन में कुछ बेसिक आइडियाज हैं, बट रिलीजन को फॉलो या फिर उसको चेंज या रिफॉर्म कौन करता है? ह्यूमन करता है। अब इसके ऊपर हम डिबेट नहीं करेंगे कैसे रिलीजन स्टार्ट हुआ, ऑल ऑफ अस नो इट, इन द एंड ऑल ऑफ अस विल बी अनहैप्पी, है ना। और इन द एंड ऑल ऑफ अस विल बी अनहैप्पी कि अगर हम साइंस के हिसाब से देखें दुनिया अलग है, रिलीजन के हिसाब से देखें तो दुनिया बिल्कुल अलग है। एंड देयर इज एन इंटरसेक्शन आल्सो, एंड देयर इज अ पार्ट वेयर बोथ आर गोइंग टू गो इन डिफरेंट डायरेक्शंस। लेट अस नॉट डिबेट अबाउट इट, बिकॉज वो जैसे स्टार्ट होगा तो फिर हम सब लोग दुखी हो जाने वाले लास्ट में, ठीक है। Anyway, so I hope all of you understood that Mahmud, he utilized the concept of jihad in order to motivate his soldiers, and then suddenly he utilized this to fight against Indians. Okay, and the word which was used at that point of time, or even used now for non-followers of Islam, is kafir, or in other words, they are known as infidels. Okay, those who do not follow Islam. But there was no big conversion at this point of time. We have no record of this. Then he also defeated, after Jaipal. Jaipal was the leader of the Hindustani dynasty. He was defeated. He committed suicide. Then his son Anandpal came into the picture. Again he was defeated. Then he went towards Punjab. Then he went towards Indo-Gangetic plain, and finally he even was able to dismantle the area of Somnath. All of us know about that. It's a very infamous kind of a raid which was made by him. But anyway, he was a person. After 1027, around 1027, we see the end of Smooth, and after that, effectively, there was no major invasion for the next, in fact, for next 150 years. Okay, from around 1030 till 1185, broadly, or 1180, make it a whole number. For next 150 years, there was no major invasion in India. But we, or whatever we can say, the regional polities did nothing to focus on safety of frontier. Safety of frontier is very important. These Rajput dynasties were thinking that it is only the responsibility कि जो सबसे पहले उधर साइड में खड़ा वही रोकेगा, हमारा उसमें कोई भी किसी भी लेवल का सपोर्ट नहीं जाएगा. So this safety of frontier was not there, and since the safety of frontier was not there, this was going to be utilized by the next person, that was Muhammad Ghuri. So Muhammad Ghuri was the one who was going to take it forward. And as all of us know about Ghuri, Ghuri first he tried to come to the region of Mount Abu. गुजरात और राजस्थान के बॉर्डर पे हमें क्या मिलता है? माउंट आबू. वहां से उन्होंने आने की कोशिश की, बट he was defeated by the Chalukyas of Gujarat. But later on he changed his strategy, came towards the southern pass. In the first battle of Tarain, he was defeated and he was hardly saved by a soldier. But during the second battle of Tarain, at this point of time, Prithviraj Chauhan, he had this crushing defeat. And this was going to create a big challenge for the other remaining dynasties also. Because Chauhan dynasty was a very relatively strong dynasty. When they got defeated, it created the circumstances which led to the establishment of what is known as Delhi Sultanate. Okay, we have to remember this. 1192 is the second battle of Tarim. From here, the power was in the hand of Qutbuddin Aibak. Okay, he was the slave of Ghuri, and that's why this dynasty is known as slave dynasty, slave or Mamluk dynasty. Okay, slave or Mamluk dynasty. Okay, so Qutbuddin Aibak, he was the military general. He was the military general. By 1206, we see the death of Muhammad Ghuri, and in 1206, we see the establishment of the Sultanate. Okay? Turkish expansion, it began from 1192. But once Muhammad Ghuri died, because Muhammad Ghuri had made this part of India as a part of his own empire. इसको हम क्या बोलते थे? Ghuri Empire. But जैसे उनकी डेथ होती है तो क्या बनता है? An independent Delhi Sultanate. This is what is known as the beginning of the medieval India. Okay? This is the beginning of medieval India. And naturally, we have large number of sources to understand this Delhi Sultanate. How many dynasties are there? 5 dynasties are there. We begin with the slave dynasty. Okay, starting from 1206. Okay, then this dynasty came to an end in 1290. And the next dynasty which came into power was Khalji dynasty. In every dynasty, we have 2-3 important personalities. Like in the slave dynasty, we have 2-3 important personalities. Iltutmish is important and Balbal, and along with Rajia. Okay, because she was the only woman ruler who sat on the throne. Khalji dynasty, we have one famous, that is Alauddin. Tughlaq dynasty, again we have 2 important personalities. First is Muhammad bin Tughlaq, then Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Sayyid dynasty has no important ruler. Okay, it ruled for hardly 35-36 years from 1440 to 1451. Lodi dynasty is important because this is where the history is going to take a new turn. It was established by Bahlul Khan Lodi, and the end was in the hands of Ibrahim Lodi, who was defeated by Babur. Okay, so Babur was able to win in the first battle of Panipat. This is the sequence which you need to remember at least before the beginning of our classes. भाई एटलीस्ट एक स्टोरी पता होनी चाहिए कितनी डायनेस्टीज हैं और कैसे कैसे उनका एस्टैब्लिश हुआ. ठीक है, लेट अस स्टार्ट विद द फर्स्ट डायनेस्टी, द स्लेव डायनेस्टी. Qutbuddin Aibak, he was a slave. Okay, he was a slave, and eventually, after winning in the second battle of Tarim, he was given considerable authority. Along with Bakhtiyar Khalji, they kept on conquering the areas like Bihar and Bengal was captured. He was going to play an important role only for 4 years because he was playing horse polo. उसको क्या बोलते थे? चौगान. और गिर गए घोड़े से और जिंदगी चली गई, है ना. और ऐसे क्वेश्चन एसएससी में पूछे जाते हैं. एसएससी में क्वेश्चन पूछे जाते हैं कौन से सुल्तान घोड़े से गिर के मरे थे. ठीक है, वो हमारे सबसे पहले ही सुल्तान थे, है ना, Qutbuddin Aibak, right? So he was the first one. Then comes Iltutmish. Iltutmish is a very, very important because Delhi Sultanate was completely unstable, and that's why Iltutmish took large number of steps, and he is considered as the real founder. Okay, founder is someone who was first. Founder is always going to be Qutbuddin Aibak, but real founder is the person who built institutions. The real founder is the person who built institutions, political, social, economic, cultural. All the institutions were built by whom? Iltutmish. So Iltutmish is considered as real founder. He ruled for around 25 years. Okay, ruled for 25-26 years, and these years are going to help in the consolidation of power. How? How he went for the consolidation? Let us try to understand. Number one, first of all, he put down all the internal rebellions among the Rajputs at Gwalior, रणथंबोर, अजमेर एंड इवन जालोर, सारे के सारे राजपूत को उन्होंने हराया. He also fought with Nasruddin Kubacha. Kubacha, he was looking for the throne of Delhi. He was thinking that he could also get the throne of Delhi. So he was also defeated by Iltutmish. During this time, Genghis Khan was very strong. Genghis Khan, he came to the border of India in 1221. He was chasing a Khwarizm prince by the name of Jalaluddin Mangurani. So he was challenging, right? So Jalaluddin Mangurani was asking for shelter. उन्होंने कहा कि भाई हमें पनाह दे दो, give me safe haven. तो इल्तुतमिश said सही टाइम नहीं है तुम्हें पनाह में, तुम्हें देंगे तो हम भी नप जाएंगे साथ में. So Genghis Khan, he came to the border of India, but because of the diplomatic level of maturity of Iltutmish, Genghis Khan did not come towards India because he was changing whom? Jalaluddin Mangurani. Jalaluddin को उन्होंने safe haven नहीं दिया. That was important. Qutbuddin Aibak started the process of creating Qutub Minar, but it was finished by Iltutmish. Next, he also monetized the economy by introducing 2 coins. ठीक है, जिसमें हमारे पास कॉपर का जीतल है और सिल्वर टन का है. तो 2 फेमस हमारे यहाँ से करेंसी का एस्टैब्लिशमेंट होता है. ठीक है, यस, टन का वाज द नेम ऑफ द कॉइन. ठीक है, एंड कॉपर का जो कॉइन था उसको जीतल को. ठीक है, सिल्वर टन का एंड कॉपर जीतल, ये इनके नाम हुआ करते थे. ठीक है, देन आफ्टर हिम, इन्होंने जब इनका सक्सेशन का टाइम आ चुका था, इन्होंने खुद ही कहा था कि भाई मेरे सारे बेटे नालायक. ठीक है, एंड आई हैव ओनली वन कैपेबल डॉटर एंड शी शुड बिकम द सुल्तान. तो रजिया सुल्तान वाज considered to be the most apt to become a sultan of Delhi. This is how Rajia Sultan, she was trying to become the queen just after him. But the problem is the people around Rajia Sultan were not happy. There was an institution known as Turkane Chihalgani. Turkane Chihalgani. ठीक है, इसको हम ग्रुप ऑफ 40 भी बोलते हैं. Group of 40. So this group of 40 was having some very important nobles. जितने भी उस टाइम के फेमस नोबल्स थे जिन्होंने हेल्प भी किया इल्तुतमिश को, वो इसका पार्ट. मैक्सिमम इन्हीं नोबल्स को अच्छी अच्छी पोस्ट भी मिलती थी. दे वर गिवन द गवर्नरशिप ऑल्सो. उनको क्या मिलता था? इक्ता मिलता था. इक्तादार बना देता था. इक्ता मीन्स प्रोविंस. तो दिल्ली सल्तनत के जो प्रोविंसेस उनको क्या बोलते थे? इक्ता बोलते थे. तो जो ग्रुप ऑफ 40 था, इट हैड बिकम वेरी पावरफुल एंड दे वर नॉट रेडी टू पुट रजिया सुल्तान ऑन throne, right? So that's why one of his son was put on throne, but finally Rajia Sultan was able to come to power. All right, and she was someone who behaved like a very independent person. But there was one major mistake which was done by her. She appointed Jalaluddin याकुत. उनको एक पोस्ट दिया गया आमिर खूर, मीन्स सुपरिटेंडेंट ऑफ रॉयल स्टेबल. वही स्टेबल बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हुआ करते बिकॉज हॉर्सेस वर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट ऑफ द कैवलरी एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम. So that's why since she appointed a non-Turkish person to a top post, इसके बाद इनके खिलाफ क्या शुरू हो गया? पूरे का पूरा एक रिवेंज मोड शुरू हो गया among these Turkish nobles. And finally, when she was away from Delhi, they created an alliance. She was defeated, and finally, we see the end of Rajia Sultan. Okay, this dynasty continued. The most important personality among them is Balban. Okay, the most important personality after him is Balban. Now, Balban himself was a part of this group of 40 at one point of time, and he was someone who was following the policy which is known as blood and iron. Blood and iron means ruthless. Okay? It doesn't matter if somebody is my relative or not. If I have to kill someone, I will kill someone. So that was the policy that he was pursuing. He was very strict. If somebody was going to challenge his authority, that person would be taken down very completely. So he came out with multiple military campaigns. Okay, the reason was very clear that he had to fight with everyone who was not accepting his authority. One big challenge in his life was that law and order was not in a very good situation when he came to power. In fact, there is this region which is known as the Mewat region. Okay, this Mewat region has large number of crimes. That's why he went to this region and he subdued the people who are known as Mayors. Okay, so they were the one, they were brutally punished by him. Second, the big challenge in front of him, that many Rajput Zamindars, they had established forts and they were defying his authority. They were also defeated, and more importantly, he came out with a theory of kingship. Okay, so Balban was the person who came out with a theory of kingship. As per this theory of kingship, he believed in certain things. Okay, as number one, he considered himself as the shadow of God. He said that whatever I have is given by the God himself. You should not challenge my authority. Second, he believed in racism. He gave all the important offices only to the Turkish nobles, not to anybody else. Only to the Turkish people. But three, he believed in the policy of blood and iron. If anybody defied his authority, those people were directly executed. Number four, he was a person who believed in justice. Said that it doesn't matter if somebody is my relative. If somebody has committed a crime, that person is to be punished very severely. He was also someone who built the institution of Diwan-e-Arch, which was going to look after the military. He also created a department for intelligence. तो जो spies हैं उनको क्या बोलते थे? फरीद बोलते थे. So this is what is known as the theory of kingship of Balban. By utilizing his theory of kingship, he was able to bring down the challenges in front of himself, and then finally he was able to continue for the next 20 years. Okay, one person, Tugril Khan, he was the governor of Bengal. Initially, he was a very good friend of Balban, but once he went to Bengal, he became very rebellious, and finally he was killed. Balban himself went there. He was the one who was killed. He also fought against the Mongols. The Mongols, they were the people who were from the descent of the Genghis Khan. And these Mongols wanted to fight. They wanted to capture as much area as possible. So that's why the Mongol policy was also established by him. Even though it was a very defensive strategy, he built new forts at Bhatinda, Sunam as well as Samana. He also created a relationship with one Mongol by the name of Hulagu Khan. He even sent some gifts to him कि भाई आके हमें रेड मत करना, एक्सप्लोर तो कर लो आसपास में, ठीक है. तो उसको ना उसके पास भेजा. उन्होंने भी गुडविल में फिर एक बार मिशन भेजा था दिल्ली की, ठीक है मान लेते हैं आपकी बात. बट हिज सन मोहम्मद खान, he was the one who was fighting against the Mongols. He died in one of these raids, and after that he himself was hard hit. फिर उनके बेटे की डेथ हो गई. So he himself died in 1286. Okay, so once he died, the next dynasty is going to be Khalji, next Tughlaq, next Sayyid, and finally would be Lodi. Okay, so after death of Balban, his son Kaikubad came to power. Now Kaikubad was a complete spoiled personality. है ना, लड़ना तो दूर. कितना टाइम हो गया? हाँ, एग्जैक्ट टाइम कितना है अभी? टाइम कितना? 4:40. ठीक है, 10 मिनट में. यहाँ पे कोई है कन्वेंस वगैरह के लिए? अरुण का नंबर है? अरुण अरुण 1 सेकेंड होगा ना? हाँ हाँ, उनको बुलाओ. हाँ, अरे एक्चुअली आज एक सेशन है. सेशन लगे रहते हैं, एक में पैर निकलेगा, दूसरे में बंद जाएंगे. हाँ, 5 बजे सेशन है. ठीक है, एनीवे चलो 10 मिनट तो कर ही लेते हैं, फिर बाकी कल कंटिन्यू. हाँ, मैं इसके लिए एक प्रोग्राम स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं. एक्चुअली आई विल बी अ मेजर पार्ट ऑफ इट, इसलिए वो फिर मुझे जाना जरूरी है. एनीवे सो कल की क्लास थोड़ी सी लंबी कर लें, आधा घंटा और, है ना. तो आज एक काम करते हैं ना, फिर अभी 5 मिनट और पढ़ लेते हैं, फिर कुछ पार्ट बच जाएगा वो कल करें. चलिए चलते हैं, ठीक है ना. तो एनीवे अब यहीं पे खत्म कर देंगे इसको. कायकू बात की स्टोरी भी बहुत अच्छी है. तो कायकुबाज अगर हिंदी शुद्ध भाषा में बोल तो अय्याश ठीक है ना, मतलब बाकी का छोड़ो, अय्याश होता है ना ड्रिंकिंग, गैम्बलिंग, म्यूजिकल कंपटीशन। उन्होंने क्या किया था, लड़ाई वड़ाई छोड़ के अपने स्पोर्ट जो था उसको म्यूजिकल कंपटीशन में कन्वर्ट कर दिया। ठीक है कि चलो भाई आज पेशकश करेंगे, आज कौन से घराना के लोग हैं। ठीक है, सो लाइक दिस कायकुबाज ही वाज नॉट फिट टू बी अ रूलर। तो उनके बाद उनके 3 ईयर ओल्ड सन थी कैमार्स, उनको रूलर बनाया गया कि भाई बाप तो नालायक है, बेटा ही कम से कम, बट वो क्या करेगा, 3 ईयर ओल्ड हार्डली। उनके लिए ये चूज नहीं कर पाए हु इज गोइंग टू बी द केयर टेकर। केयर टेकर को हम क्या बोलते हैं इन टेक्निकल टर्म, रीजेंट। ठीक है ना, तो रीजेंट के ऊपर कुछ हुआ नहीं। फाइनली जलालुद्दीन खिलजी केम, जलालुद्दीन ही वाज द कमांडर ऑफ द आर्मी, he killed Kaikubad and finally he became the ruler and he is going to establish the Khalji dynasty। ठीक है, तो इस चीज को बस एक चीज को ध्यान रखेंगे आप, that Jalaluddin Khalji, he was the founder, okay, and he killed Kaikubad and that's how we see the beginning of the Khalji dynasty। That's the beginning of the Khalji dynasty। Okay, so Khalji dynasty, it came to the power with a transition within next 6 years। और वो कैसे होगा, जलालुद्दीन खिलजी will be killed by his own Alauddin Khilji। Now Alauddin is a very colorful figure in the medieval history। Alauddin Khilji is going to rule for next 20 years from 1296 till 1360। ठीक है, अब इनके बारे में कल ही पढ़ेंगे, आज फिर मैं अभी के लिए यहीं पे स्टॉप कर देता हूँ। ठीक है, थैंक यू सो मच, कल यहीं से स्टार्ट करेंगे। समझ में आया इंट्रोडक्शन, अर्ली मिडिएवल पीरियड का थोड़ा सा जो हमने इंट्रोडक्शन दिया सबको समझ में आया। कल हम यहाँ से स्टार्ट करेंगे, थोड़ा सा मैं आपको इंट्रोडक्शन दूंगा विजयनगर। ठीक है, along with harmony and if we have enough time then we'll try to finish a little bit about Mughals as well as Marathas। So tomorrow we'll be finishing up our pre-foundation classes for the paper 1। पेपर 1 के लिए अभी फिनिश करेंगे, बाकी हमारी क्लासेस आफ्टर प्रीलिम्स। अभी तक समझ में आ रही है स्टोरी? ठीक है, इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू हैव सम बेसिक आइडियाज अबाउट दिस बिफोर स्टार्टिंग द रियल फाउंडेशन। ठीक है, तो आज के लिए यहीं पे